Hi, my name is Dan, and I am going to talk today a little bit about perception. And having gone through addiction, depression, anxiety most of my life, I've gone through a lot of different stages of perception, and I think that we all go through that because we go through our ups and downs and our cycles through life. And as we get older, we have different perceptions than we do when we were younger. And I think our perception either of ourself is very important. Obviously, the way we perceive ourselves is going to be part of the law of assumption. And the law of assumption is basically what you assume to believe. So, what do you believe about yourself? Do you believe that you can make it? Do you believe that you can create whatever you want in your life? If you do believe that you can create anything you want in your life, you will be able to create it, because that is the law of the assumption. That is the law, and that is truth. And people don't realize that if you believe something, it's like if you believe that you are going to get sick, or if you believe you're going to have a bad day, you will have a bad day. Like you will create that, and you will create it through the way that you feel. You'll create it through your senses. You'll create it into your outer environment. And so perception is how we perceive our outer environment based on our inner, what is going inside on our inside. So let's say we have gone through different stages of perception, and some people like to use plant medicines in these YouTube channels and to change their levels of perception. And yes, I've gone through. I did ketamine therapy for depression. I did 12 infusions and about 50 more different ketamine lozenges therapy, and it has changed my perception on a lot of things. And let me tell you that it is really makes you kind of double guess a lot of things in your life. And I think any drug, anything that alters your perception on life is going to change the way your previous perception was. So I had one trip where I was being dissected by aliens, and that I was in this time loop, that I was going to experience hell, which every bad thing that I'd ever done in my life was being shown to me. And I was in this time loop, and I didn't have any recollection of having a previous life. I just thought that I was in this hell and I was there for eternity, and I was going to experience that forever. And then the aliens were dissecting me, which was a nurse who was actually taking out the infusion. So what they do is they actually put the ketamine through your infusion. This is what the anesthesiologist does. And it was a trip, because then I came to, and then I was like, I've had these perceptions of life, and I was like, I changed my whole life thinking like I knew the secrets to life. And anyone that has done any LSD or any of those hardcore like hallucinogens, you'll have these crazy perceptions that like you realize what the secret of life, and then you forget it. And a lot of times they say to write it down, and then when you write it down and you come back, you're like, oh, maybe I was just the drug, right? But it's just changing your perception. Everything is just perception of reality. And so when I look at the skyscrapers, earlier today I was looking at the skyscrapers up in Austin. If you go to any big city and you just see the skyscrapers, for me that always kind of trips me out, because it just doesn't seem very real. Having some huge skyscraper, that like having these cranes drop like cement, and then like cities being built like that, it just doesn't seem very real. And as I was looking at that, I was just like, you know what? This is just my perception. Someone else is looking at that totally different, and someone else is looking at it totally different. So if you imagine yourself being blind, and you being blind, you're going to perceive something different than someone can see. And just being colorblind, you're going to see something different. And just being, let's say your vision is not 20/20, you're going to perceive something different. So imagine we all perceive things differently. That's why, like, different events, if you have a cop will if there's an investigation, they'll ask, report what is going on, and everyone will give a different account of what was going on during the event, because they all have different perceptions of the things. The same thing may have happened, but they perceived it differently, because one person saw like exactly that guy do it, the other person saw exactly the other person do it, but you have to understand is that our perception is built off of what is going on and what we assume. And so it's going to go on what we assume and what we like spiritually inside. And so inside of us, whatever's inside, whatever our values are, we're going to have so much different, the perception on everything is going to be completely different. The assumption of yourself is going to be completely different. That's why they say you need to do a lot of work on yourself first before you can start to love someone else. If you don't do that work on yourself, how are you going to love someone else? Because your perception on everything is still going to be changed. It's like, if you're hurting and grieving, how are you going to start and help someone else if you're still in that grieving process? You need to be fully through that process. You need to heal properly before you can start helping someone else grieve. And I think a lot of people what they do is that they don't heal, and then they start going out and trying to heal other people, and then they don't realize, well, I haven't healed myself first. And so then what happens is they don't give the proper guidance, and so that person isn't properly healed, and so on and so on. And so you can see how we as a community or family or universe, people, whatever you want to say, is if one person doesn't heal, one doesn't grieve properly or heal properly, the other is not going to either. And so everything comes down to the way we perceive what the events are and perceive ourself. So however you perceive yourself is the law of belief, the law of assumption. So do you perceive yourself to be a go-getter? If you perceive yourself to be a go-getter and someone who doesn't give up, then something doesn't go your way, and let's say you fail at something and whatever you were going to do, then that's not going to faze you, because you already seen yourself, you perceive yourself as a go-getter. But if you perceive yourself as a loser, or if you perceive yourself as someone who quits, then the first thing that happens, you're going to quit, because the way you perceive, the way you believe is going to influence whether or not you keep going, whether or not you actually succeed. So a lot of the things in life that we are actually failing at and not succeeding at has nothing to do with the external event. Like these people that created, I always see different businesses, like random things that you'll buy at Whole Foods, and I always think some guy had this idea, and he had this idea in his head first, and this guy put it into reality, and he probably went through a lot of struggles and he made it work. Good for him, because it was not easy. And I know, because I've done it so many times, and I know how hard it is, no matter what it is. And I think it was an ice cream brand. I think it was like the Enlightened whatever ice cream protein, and I just know that it had to be struggle. It had to be. And I'm sure, I guarantee, if you asked that guy, if you said, hey, how was it creating? Did you have any struggles? He would have said 100% yes. I struggled the whole entire time. There was times I probably wanted to give up, and I didn't, and I almost did. There was very close, I was going to give up. Because most of the time, most of these people, they like almost give up, but then something just gives them this little inspiration to push forward. And that's all they need. Because a lot of times is that we're on the brink of it. We're on the brink of making it to our manifestation. We're on the brink of creating the outcome of our dreams, but we just need a little bit. We're just need a little inch there. It's not always like 100% clear. It's never like full speed ahead and everything is happening perfectly. Like I manifested everything perfectly, because the law of the incidents, the bridge of incidences, shows you that you have to struggle and to be that person the end result person. So the guy that created the ice cream he had to go through those struggles so that in the end he could be the owner of the company and then be able to handle all those struggles, whatever it is that comes his way. And so people don't realize that, and they think one failure, it is not really a failure, but when whatever struggle comes up, they figure I'm going to give up because their perception is off. Their perception of everything is off, and we perceive everything differently. That's why it's like you may perceive the whiteboard as being bigger than I perceive it. You may perceive my handwriting as really sloppy, and I perceive it as really very nice, even though I know it's sloppy. But you could see that we can perceive things totally different based off who we are. And based off of, and the thing is that is just a perception. And people don't realize, they think that whatever they believe is, well, if you believe it, it's going to be true. But the thing is that they can change their beliefs. If they say, I don't like people that have sloppy handwriting, and I will never date someone that has sloppy handwriting because I believe that everyone with sloppy handwriting is stupid. Well, that's just a belief. That's just a perception. That's going to be true for them because that's what they believe, but it does not mean that it's true. Do you get what I'm saying? So just because someone believes that it is to be true does not mean that it actually is true. So everything in this world is actually just a perception, no matter what. Besides the laws of like gravity and then the laws of physics and stuff like that, everything else is just a perception. So, and the law of assumption, that is a law. The law of belief, that is a law. But these are laws of, like, we can't change these. These are not something that is human created. This is something that is God given and is spiritually. And if you were to go on to Mars, and if you were going to the freaking sun or whatever, you would still have all these the physics and stuff. The only thing is the black hole. I guess when I nerd out and I get into that, in the black hole, actually they break down all the laws of physics. So if there's in the black hole, your law of belief does not exist. I don't know what the black hole happens, but hopefully we don't go there. But I just love to hear, because people always think they're so like really like into their beliefs. I believe this, I believe that, and I believe this, and it's like, and you're not open to even accepting anyone else's thoughts. And the thing is that we don't know anything. Do you realize that? And I think if you keep yourself open to that, and open to that your beliefs are grounded on maybe something else, maybe like your family telling you, or maybe how you were raised, that maybe you would be open to getting more. Maybe you'd be open to gaining more. Maybe you're closing yourself off because you're telling yourself that, no, I cannot be wrong because my beliefs are my beliefs, even though I created them, or my family created them, and I am just gonna be just closed off. And the thing is that we never open up, and we're never gonna gain anything. We're never gonna gain anything inside and build anything inside. We're not gonna gain any new beliefs about ourselves if we have already pretended like we figured it out, right? There are some religions that people are like, I already figured out life, this is everything is figured out. And it's like, respect to them, but also is like, there's a lot of things I think that you just don't know, because you may have read the Bible a million times, but maybe it's misinterpreted. Maybe your perception is off. Maybe the perception of the person who wrote it is off. And so maybe perception of what someone said to you is off. Like, imagine someone says bye to you, and you're like, you perceive it to be that they were being mad at you. And so all day you're thinking, what did I do to piss him off? Well, screw him. I don't like him because he's an asshole anyway. And the guy maybe didn't even need to say anything bad. So we perceive things in life and just in our physical world, but we also perceive it in our internal and our spiritual world. And it's just a perception. And I think what it all comes down to hopefully by now, I hope that most of you, some of you might be aware of this, and I already gave it away, is called awareness. So if you have awareness, you will be able to recognize things because you will be aware. You will be aware if your mind goes that way. So because we are not all perfect, none of us are perfect, and we all have traumas and things with like toxic things. Everyone does, regardless if they want to say they don't, but we all do. And so I'll have things in my mind and I'm like, oh, that person is this way because this, and then I'll have to catch myself and I'll be aware. I'm being okay, like that is just a racial thing or a racial comment, or that is some sort of, that is just a horrible belief, and it's just a perception, and it's not right. And I'll catch myself because I'm aware, but sometimes I'm not aware, and then I have to like really go back and be like, where did this come from? And the more that am not aware, the less that I'm able to actually perceive the things closer to how they really are. So when you just are not aware of anything that's going on in life, if you're not aware of anything, then you're not going to be able to believe anything. You're not going to be able to make any work on your inside. You're not going to be able to like take any of the toxic things, the traumas that you have dealt with, and be able to change your values and work on your values. What's important to you? What makes you like you're here so little. That's the thing. Like you have to understand, you're here so little. We are here like how many days we have left. We don't even know. And you have never found out what's your purpose here, what's important, what's your values. And then maybe those can change by being aware, and just being aware that your thoughts are just your mind creating just ideas. Maybe they're creating things so that way you don't get hurt. Like, oh, all men are this way because this guy hurt me and I don't want to go there again. So I'm not going to be aware of that thought, which is totally wrong, because we know that not all men are that way and not all women are that way. We have to get past that thinking. And I think that's the problem now, is we're getting into this black and white thinking now, is all men are this way and all women are this way and all people this type. We have to get past that. We are all people. We are all individuals. I think like social media and all this stuff has created people to be like clumped together, because yeah, some people are trying to just go with the herd, but that does not mean that everyone is like that. And I think that's what it may mean when you find people that are different and they are themselves, and they aren't afraid to be wrong. They aren't afraid to have their perception be off. They aren't afraid to know that they need a lot of work to be done on the inside. They're not afraid to change their values, and they're not afraid to be knowing if they're aware or not. And so those are the people that I think will find the most success in this world, is because those are the people that are going to be constantly looking at themselves and the patterns in their life, and being constantly recognizing if they're aware of what's going on in their life, if they're perceiving things right, wrong, are they like, because everything is going to be a perception anyways, so we're never really right or wrong. The universe has no right or wrong. The universe only has positive, negative. Even then, a negative charged ion is not really negative in terms of being bad. It's just opposite. So you have a positive charged ion and you think positive. Well, thinking negative is sometimes good. And I don't mean that in like you should always be thinking negative, but sometimes you have to think negative, because that's the reason to get you out of where you are. You can't think positive if like you're living in this like slumps and you're just like, you can't even get out of bed and you're like, I gotta think positive. You gotta be like, I gotta think negatively. If I don't change what I'm doing, I'm going to end up dead. That's a negative thinking, but it is in turns out to be positive. If I get wasted every single day and and I don't change that, it's a negative thinking. I'm going to be dead. But if I don't, like, those end up being positive, but those, you see, those are just negative, positive. They're just the same of the same type of thinking. So it doesn't matter what, if it's positive, negative. And I think those are what it comes down to, is perception. So how do you perceive your life? Do you perceive it to be going exactly as you plan? Do you perceive that you are living your dreams? Are you perceiving that you are assuming the way that your life is going? So let's say I assume that I'm going to be a motivational speaker. So I'm assuming that, and eventually I will be that because I'm assuming it. And that's the law of the belief. So I believe it, I believe it, I believe it. I do all the work every day. I work on it, no matter how many people tell me that it's not going to work, and how many people tell me that I'm not good enough, and how many people tell me that you're not going to make it. I still keep doing it because no one has any dictation over my perception, and no one has dictation on what my law of assumption is and what I believe. And no one is able to dictate your law of assumption and your law of belief. And they can try to change your perception on life, just like drugs can change our perception. But it's up to you to constantly be aware. And so once you're aware of things, then you can change your perception. You can change your belief. You can change all these things. So you have to be aware first, and then everything else goes changed. So that's why I always talk about being aware. Is like, if something is like, let's say your dog is just chewing up the house, and you're just totally got your headphones on, and he just chewing one pillow, and you're not aware, and then he shows another pillow, and then he's chewing the whole house down, and then finally, like 5 hours later, you're aware, and the house is already torn apart. When you quickly could have been aware when he first tore the first pillow and said, no, don't do that, and taught him not to do it, and then he didn't tear anything, and then the house is fine. But imagine your life is the same way, is that once you're aware, you stop any of this negative thinking or these negative thought patterns, these ways of our brains have been conditioned to, or programmed to, kind of to keep us in a low vibrational state from actually reaching those dreams, or reaching those higher vibrational states, which would be manifestation and creation. So that's where law of assumption, and that is where awareness is. And I think by now, if you are not willing to go into the inside and do that work, and not willing to actually take a look at yourself and say, okay, what are the bad things about me and what are the good things? Because I'm going to tell you that I definitely know all the things that I'm good at, and I definitely know all the things that I'm bad at. So that's why when someone says, hey, you're really bad at that, and if it isn't true, then it doesn't bother me, because I already know what things I'm good at and what things I'm bad at. And they could say, you're really bad at speaking, and I could say, well, I may be not that good now, but I am getting better, and I'm better than I was 3 months ago. So I don't care what you say. And they could say, well, you don't have any muscle. And I could say, well, I know you're wrong, because I do. So, and they could say you're ugly, and that doesn't bother me either. And they can say all these things, but if you don't do that inner work, then they say these things and you don't know if it's true, then you end up being, it ends up afflicting you. It ends up affecting you. So do you see why when you don't know what your beliefs and your values are, or who you are, why your self-esteem can be so affected when someone says these things to you? So your perception of yourself is off. Your perception of reality is off, because someone says, hey, everyone hates you because you're obnoxious. And if you don't know like any better, that might hurt you, because you might be like, well, I thought I was a nice person and everyone else hates me because this person said so. Well, if you haven't really done the work, then you will not ever, you might not know. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, and the thing is that's just their opinion, and their opinion doesn't mean anything. But I'm saying is that you got to go through all this work first. You got to be aware, and then you could say, okay, maybe that person has some truth to that. Maybe I'm kind of a bitch or a dick sometimes around people, and that's why people don't like me, because I could be that way. And so maybe I need to change how I respond to people. Or maybe I need to have a dog and not hang around with humans. That's usually the best plan I figured out. So there's a lot of different steps, but we have to be aware, because we don't want to be 80 years old and be one of those people, the Karens that are yelling and screaming at the kids for riding their skateboards down the street. I've seen those people, so many of them. They're everywhere. Every place I live, there's always like a person next door. And then to give you a little story, there was, with the last house I lived at, there was this person who literally, these two people, old people, they had nothing better to do. Like, their whole block was like this. All these old people, and they had these rich homes, like big homes, $1 million homes, like in Santa Barbara, and they would look out the curtains every time a car drove by. They looked out the curtains, and then when you would get in the house, they would stare at you. They would stare at you every second, like you're getting out of the car and getting in the house. They'd stare at you. Then they would come over and complain if you left something out on your yard. Like your yard, you left the barbecue grill out. The barbecue grill out on your yard annoyed them, because they did not like to see it, because they said that it makes the whole block look bad. And it's like, what is that business to you? And these people they had nothing better to do. They just sat there and stared. And do you think those people are going to live? Do you think they're going to die a happy life? Do you think they're living a fulfilled life if that's what they're doing, complaining about everything? And the yelling, and my friend parked at one time on like next to their house, and the lady came down screaming, yelling. She's like, what happens if there's a fire? He's like, I'm gonna be here 5 minutes. And she's like, if there's a fire, you're like, and she went ballistic. And he was there 5 minutes. It's like, lady, there hasn't been a fire here for 50 years. There's not gonna be a fire. But you do want to be one of those people? No. But the thing is that we will end up being that if we don't make any of these changes. If we keep going that route of the same beliefs, the same perceptions that we have. And to be one of those people just staring out the window, just looking down at everyone and mad at everything, they're going to die, and they're going to think, man, I really wasted my life. I did not try to do that thing I wanted to do. I did not try something like extraordinary, because right now these people aren't fulfilled. I don't think Tony Robbins would be sitting outside the curtain of his house looking down, yelling at the kids skateboarding. Like, these are people that are just, they did not have a fulfilling life. And I just find that is like, when I picture that in my head, I say, I do not want to live that way. I do not want to die that way, because those people are going to die, and they're going to die very, very, very painfully and very, very sad, because they're going to, right now, they're just holding on, and they're holding on tightly, and by getting mad at everyone else, it's kind of allowing them to hold on. But if you were to be that person and like know the minutes and hours you're going before you die, they would be like, oh my God, this is it. Man, I wasted everything. I wasted my whole entire life. Like, I could have tried to be anything in my life. And then they would have been like, all those people that told me I couldn't do it, most of them are all dead anyways. Why did I care what they say? So you have the ability to do anything you want. It just matters of what you perceive about the reality and what you perceive about yourself. Because either one, it doesn't matter, but you have to change that perception and change that through through the law of assumption, by assuming things, by bettering yourself, by doing things, by waking up early, by whatever it needs. But you have to create that identity about yourself, not the old identity. So change the identity, lose whatever perception, change your perception of yourself if you need to. Some of us have a good perception of ourselves and perception of the reality. That's good. But just know that it's perception. It's not real. It's just how the way we perceive things. Just the way that matter and everything comes together so that our eyes can perceive it, our eyes can make of it. And then know that it takes a lot of work on the inside. If you really want to be full, if you really want to be not that Karen that's yelling out the window, I'm telling you, because years go by and then those little things that bothered you end up being big things that bothered you. And you can't have little things that bother you anymore, because I'm sorry, it just ends up becoming big things eventually, because they become part of you, and then you just become the person that gets mad at it for no reason. So it has to come down to awareness and being aware of what's going on in your life, and being aware of what is dictating you and what is causing stress, or what is making you either a good person or it's causing good things in your life or bad things. So I always come back to awareness, because I always think that that's just the number one key. But perception is definitely a way that we use that part of awareness and to get to the law of belief and everything else. So anyways, don't be the Karen. If you like this video, subscribe, send it to all your friends if you don't, and I'll see you in the next one.